Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. It is so fun to introduce you to somebody, first of all, that you met before. This is Bruce W. Bishop, right? Bruce W. Bishop is what you write under.
Hmm.
And he is returning, he has returned to tell you about a new book. It's also fun to introduce you to somebody whose writing I love and whose book I loved. So say hey to Bruce W. Bishop.
Well, hey there, Karen E. Osborne, and it's so nice to see you again as well, because the first interview we did was delightful a couple of years ago. So thank you
Yeah.
for inviting me back.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you. And I want you guys to. So he was a travel writer and still is a nonfiction travel writer. And then he turned to fiction. He lives in Canada. And he's here today to talk about his book, Grow Up, Rory Rafferty. Grow Up. And as I mentioned, I had the pleasure of reading this book and reviewing it. So I want to just read my review that I shared. So Bruce W. Bishop created an entertaining, relatable cast of complex characters in this warm-hearted story about young adulthood, finding one's footing, navigating friendship and love. And on the way, Bishop shares lessons in tolerance, the ability to grow, to change, and to embrace our best and real selves. And I hope there's a book too, because I loved Rory. Let's see what happens to him. So tell us, let's start there. Tell us the premise of this book, the period, the setting. Just give us a little background before we dive into who Rory is.
Hmm. I think the premise would be to be true to yourself, to be true to oneself, to follow your instincts, to follow your dreams, to try not to let the outside world influence you too much in either direction. And and yeah, like like the Shakespearean quote, "To thine own self be true." So that's what I kind of wanted to start with. And because I had just finished writing a trilogy of historical fiction, I was a little bit tired of the incredible amounts of research one has to do with historical fiction. So when I realized if I wrote about a young person moving from small town to big city, but place it in 1979, it's not exactly historical yet. It will be in a few years.
Very soon.
Very soon, yeah, which kind of dates you and I too. But at the same time, I think 1979 was almost a very innocent time. It was before a lot of big things happened, including the AIDS epidemic, including um, a worldwide recession, including the birth of the internet. I think we were all much more innocent in those days when, my gosh, to send a fax was kind of a big deal, whereas now everything is instantaneous and we've been overcome by technology in so many ways. So yeah, that's the premise, I guess you'd say.
Where's he moving from to? Tell the
Right.
audience that.
Right. Well, I live in Nova Scotia, Canada, on the east coast of Canada, and I grew up in a small town here in Nova Scotia. Like my main character, I did move away after university to the big city of Toronto. So I feel like I know Toronto very, very well. I did end up living there for 25 years. However, this novel just takes place in 1979 and 80, and so the all the drama and the characters and the comedy is compressed within those 2 years.
Yeah. So I did like Rory so much. Tell it, what do you love about Rory?
I think I liked his resilience and the ability to bounce back after some um, well, a couple of tragic circumstances when we all have friends or relatives who pass away. It is part of our growing up in
Yes.
life. But also the demands and the insecurities of having your first big job. The wondering, will I succeed enough to make it big in this industry? And in Rory's case, he had culinary aspirations. He wants to be like owning his own seafood restaurant someday. So he, in that naivete of a 20-year-old, oh, I'll just move to the biggest city in Canada and hey, it'll happen. And of course, it doesn't happen quite that way. Life gets in the way, and we have challenges and problems along the way. So, but yeah, I just kind of like his resilience. He's not willing to say, that's it, I'm moving back home. Just doesn't happen
Right.
for him.
Yeah. And he's so kind. That was the other thing I liked about him. He just, even to the people who didn't always wish him well, he had he just had a lot of empathy and kindness. So the story opens and we meet this amazing character. So we meet the lovable and lovely Brie. Oh, we also meet Stephanie. And she jumps off the page. Tell us a little bit about Stephanie.
Well, that's good to know. I modeled Stephanie after I guess three or four different young women I met in my early years in Toronto, because I was a waiter and a bartender at the time. A lot of people in the hospitality industry are actors, models, dancers, singers, as the
Mhm.
expression goes, and Stephanie is one of them. But she has such an inflated opinion in a way of her accomplishments. She brags about uh, playing the part of a Pekingese dog in a dog food commercial. But in reality, I remember on the plane one time coming from here to Toronto in those early days, and I was sitting next to a young woman who was the daughter of a fairly famous sports broadcaster in Canada. I won't mention her name, but she seemed different to me. She seemed very overconfident and just a lovely, lovely person to talk to. And she announced, I'm an actress. And of course, when you're 19 or 20 years old, you think, oh my God, that means television, that means movies, whatever. And I said, in all honesty and being naive, I said, what, have you been in anything that I might have seen? And she said, well, I played a head of lettuce in a McDonald's commercial. And it just, it kind of blew my mind thinking, I guess, yeah, that's acting if you've got to be a head of lettuce. So I took that and
Thing I'm
turned it into a
sure.
a Pekingese dog in a dog food commercial because, oh my gosh, I admire actors so much for putting themselves in the line all the time. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
Stephanie is besides being her overblown sense of herself, she's a really loyal best friend, isn't she? She
Yeah.
ends up being, a true friend to Rory, and she sort of takes him in her mind. She's taking him under her wing and helping him on his way. So you just said that you have three historical novels. You write have written and still write travel nonfiction,
Mhm.
and now you're writing fiction. Like, what's your writing process? Does it change between the genres that you're writing, or is it the same? What does that look like?
Well, I think when I first started with fiction in 2020, I honestly didn't know what I was doing. It was to the point where it's like, how do you write a novel? That's what I Googled because I didn't know. I mean, when you've been taught to write articles for newspapers and magazines and keep it at a very strict word count and get all your facts in and make sure you don't, um, misinterpret things or misquote people. Writing fiction is like, yay, go to town because there's no rules. I mean, yes, of course, there's basic rules to follow and word counts to follow, depending on the genre in which you're writing. But it was just such a freedom, a freeing feeling. And I think that's why the novels in the trilogy just sort of one followed the other. And I didn't even really stop in 4 years to get them out. So, the process has
So
changed
you
somewhat in
wrote
that,
all three novels over 4 years?
yeah, the
Wow,
first one came out in 2020, second one 2021, and the third one in 2022, and then the last one just last fall. And this is Rory, the guy behind me here. That one came out just a year ago in November.
that's
Um,
impressive.
well, I don't know. Thank you, but I just it's like being let loose, as I said, when you don't have the confines of an editor breathing down your neck saying you've got to get this in, and I want only 650 words by next Friday. Yeah, it's a lot. This is a lot different and a lot
This
more
is a
fun.
lot different. You're
Mm.
your own boss. You're your
Ye-
own everything, you know. Well, the characters do boss us around, telling us which way they want to go and what,
They,
but in general, we
they
have a
do.
lot more control. So are
Yeah.
you working on something new or got anything
Well,
underway?
since you mentioned Stephanie, yeah, everybody likes Stephanie. I mean, and people like Rory too, as you say. He's kind and he's empathetic and all that. But Stephanie either gets under people's skin or they laugh out loud at her antics. Um, One of my favorite scenes that I wrote in Grow Up Rory Rafferty is when she's invited to be the co-master of ceremonies at a fashion show in Palm Springs, California. And I had such a fun time writing that because she'd never been there before. She's totally winging it. She's there because her agent said, you better go and do this freebie because it's going to help your career. So, yeah, I knew that when I finished writing Rory, Stephanie would be in my life again. So the next book is going to be about her primarily.
Oh, I am looking forward to
Yeah.
that because I did really adore her. She's just like bigger than life and kind of crazy and funny and everything. So that sounds great. I love that.
Mm.
So have you read anything? You know, we like to make recommendations, book recommendations to our audience. And I'm wondering if you've read anything recently that you can, you know, one or two books that you could recommend to our audience.
Absolutely. I recently attended a book fair, and that technically it was at our biggest library in the city. And so there were about 60 authors, most of whom were indie authors. And the man sitting next to me was a really nice guy with a slight accent I initially couldn't place. And he had his second novel there to sell that day. And his name is Robert de la Chevatière. I hope I pronounced it correctly. And he wrote a book called We Were Not Kings.
Mm.
I'm about three-quarters of the way through it. And I really, really like it because it's, first of all, it is a coming of age story as well. But Robert, where did I put my note? He was born in Dominica. He moved with his family to Guadeloupe. Then they moved to Bermuda. Then they moved to Canada and to my city. So it's
Mm.
the book is so interesting. It is a family drama, and it's I would term it as literary fiction more so than maybe commercial fiction. Um, but it's fascinating because of that movement the author has had in his life that allows him to be able to write so effortlessly about people that move from island to island and the differences in the Caribbean islands, and then
Mm.
finally to Canada. And he's been a school teacher here for 20 years, which again
Mm.
blew me away. I thought, he'd only been here a couple of years. So I'm really enjoying We Were Not Kings. And another one that you probably have heard about because it came out about a year or so ago is Yellowface. And
Yes, yes.
yeah, it was my sister who sent it to me as a gift. I hadn't heard of it at the time. Um, but you kind of devour a book like this because
Yes.
it's about writing, it's about authors, and especially about one author who's not terribly successful. And I won't give away any spoilers, but she takes over the identity of a very successful author. So within the course of her journey, we're learning about her, but the mainstream traditional publishing industry at the same time and how cutthroat and competitive and crazy it really is. So
Yeah.
That was a
That
great
was a great read.
gift
I
to have.
really enjoyed that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
two wonderful recommendations. Thank you, Bruce.
Oh, you're
So
welcome.
now everybody is interested in all of your writing. So, of course, you can find him on Amazon and you can find him on Barnes and Noble. And if people have independent bookstores here in the US, can they get your book as well?
It's a little bit more difficult to do that. I have been known to actually send books myself from my home address to some people in the States who might want it that do find it difficult to find. Because I'm an independently published author, to get distribution in the US
It's
is pretty
harder.
hard.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
ebooks, it's so much easier. I'm with Draft to Digital, so virtually any online outlet that sells ebooks, you can find my books there. Um,
And where
I
can
have
we find you, like with your website and
yeah,
more about
yeah.
you?
The website is brucebishopauthor.com. So that's easy enough. Just one long word, brucebishopauthor.com. On Facebook, it's bbishop.writer. And on Instagram and Threads, it's Bruce in Halley, Hali, just short for Halifax. And yeah, that you can find me, Bruce W. Bishop. And the reason why I put the W in there is because there are a couple of journalists outside Canada that are Bruce Bishops. And I wanted to make sure I didn't get confused with people I've never met before but have the same name as myself. So,
Yeah, that's why I put my E in there. There's a Karen Osborne who's a wonderful author, and I met her. We
oh,
finally met each other because we collide on Google.
right.
If you Google Karen Osborne, the two of us are always so. And she surprised me. She came to a book talk I was doing, and she just walked in and said, "Hey, Karen E, I'm Karen." And we shook hands, and I've had her as a guest on the show.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that's why that E is in there for me too. Same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
have two, our names are evidently common.
I
Who
guess
knew?
so. Yeah. And
Who knew?
The other Bruce Bishop I first met was a newspaper reporter. So I thought that's too coincidental. So that's when I started adding the W. So yeah.
Yes. All right. So now you know how to, so many of you have met him before, but those of you who it's the first time, and we have lots of Canadian watchers. Hello, Canadians. Hi. So you have a fellow Canadian here, and I hope that you will follow him, that you will go to his website, that you'll go to his social media, that you will buy his books, that you will review them. Reviews are so important to us, and that you will let him know that you met him on what are you reading, what are you writing. Until next week, right? Next week. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you, Karen.